How many of you think it would be terrible to be sold into slavery by your brothers, and then on top of that, then you're thrown into prison for something that you were completely innocent of? And after all that, I mean, you thought things were going well, and that was where your life ended up, but it all turns around. That is the story of Joseph in the Bible. The story of Joseph in the Bible later in life finds his brothers in front of him, and his brothers in that moment are expecting revenge, right? Well, what does he say? Catch what he says, Genesis 50:20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Now go back into Joseph's story, think about what he went through, and in the end what he learns is that many lives were saved because he went down this challenging path, a horrible path. And yet, his faithfulness to God allowed him to be used to absolutely change the world. When the early church is being persecuted, it seems terrible. It's a bad thing, and you wouldn't call it anything other than that. They're chasing us down to kill us. And yet what happens because of it? The Christians run from Jerusalem. They leave Jerusalem, and they begin to spread the gospel all over the world. But why does that start? Because they're being chased and their lives are being threatened. Acts 8:4. Those who had been scattered preached the word wherever they went. That's how the message was moved across the world, through a bad thing in their eyes. Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Think about the story of David and Goliath. When this young man is going up against this big giant, that's bad. No one's going to be in that situation going, yay! No, this is a bad situation. And yet, in that same time, it's a good situation. Because how else can all these Philistines and the rest of the world realize the power of God? How else could that happen? There's no other way but by facing this giant. Some looked at the giant, and there was a whole army looking at this giant saying, it's too big, it's too much, it's too challenging, none of us can take this on. But David looked at it and said, this is how God is going to be shown, by defeating this giant. Now notice something very interesting about it. David's not operating from the idea of the power of positive thinking. Goliath is. What does Goliath say? Goliath is despising David in verse 42. He's cursing David by his gods. In verse 43, he's threatening David. He's saying, am I a dog that you're going to send this child at me? Come to me and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air. I'm going to feed you to the beasts of the field. Goliath understands the power of positive thinking. He's got it already in his head how it's all going to play out. He's using some positive reinforcement to what's about to happen. What am I saying here? That idea, the concept of just naming it and claiming it and saying that God is good, he's going to take care of no matter what, all that stuff, okay, that's fine. But David focuses solely on the concept of God is God and his will be done, and no matter what happens moving forward, it will be to the good of what God is doing. He's pointing it back at God. David says, God is on display here, not me. This moment is not about me. And that's what some of us need to say in our head. This moment, this challenge is not about me. God is on display here. And if God is on display, I am just the vessel. That's what Joseph said. That's what David said. That's what Paul said. Even Job, which is an amazing story of wise advice not being wise advice. Just chapter after chapter after chapter of them telling Joseph what he should be doing and how he has been unfaithful, and somehow, some way, he needs to get his life back right with God. And Joseph over and over says, nope, that's not correct. That's not what's happening right here. What's happening right here is God is on display, and I don't understand how, I don't understand what, but he's on display, and he's doing something, and I'm just going to keep rowing the boat. We have to keep pressing on.